Hey there, it's Dr. Justin Marcagiani. Welcome to Beyond Wellness Radio, where we provide actionable health information on a week-to-week basis that can help you improve your life. Feel free to head over to justinhealth.com, where we have various opt-in video series on more in-depth health topics such as female hormones, thyroid, and gut health. Also, while you're there, feel free and schedule a consult with myself, Dr. J, and or my colleagues. We're available worldwide to provide natural health support for any of your major health issues. Again, welcome to the podcast and enjoy the show. And we are live. It's Dr. Justin Marcagiani here. Today is going to be a fabulous interview. I have Scott Nelson, who's one of the co-founders of Joov. Joov is a phenomenal red light technology, really good, lots of cool benefits. I'm really excited to have him on the show today and talk all about things red light and how we can use it to improve your health. Well, Scott, welcome to the show.
Dr. J, pleasure to be on the show. Really looking forward to the discussion.
Excellent, Scott. So first, tell me about your background. How do you even get into a field where you're, hey, I'm going to invent red light technology and bring it to the masses? How does that even work? How do you even get to this point?
Right. Well, I'd like to say it was all planned out and very strategic, but that's not really the case. I personally spent most of my professional career in the traditional med tech space. So with companies like Medtronic, Covidien, Boston Scientific, and really more specifically the peripheral vascular arena. So I have a really strong med tech background. But the story of how we founded Joov is really probably not too dissimilar to any other startup. This was back in early 2015, and my wife and her sister purchased a red light therapy package from a local spa in Minneapolis. That's where we started the company. Cool. And saw really good benefits. But when we looked at the product landscape and the available information online to learn more about this technology, there really wasn't a lot of good offerings. Either way, right? Whether it was to learn in a sort of easily digestible way, more about light therapy or photobiomodulation, or from a product standpoint, there really wasn't, very good offerings for when it comes to devices that you could use at home. And so we kind of thought, there might be something here. There might be an opportunity to kind of like, see if we can build a product that kind of suits our own needs first. And that's a high level overview, but that's sort of how we got started.
Cool. So like, what is red light? We have, obviously it's a spectrum, right? Like what's that frequency? How does that compare to like UVB light where you can make vitamin D, but also get a sunburn? What's that comparison look like?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because light can be kind of one of these abstract things, right? For people, especially if people are new to it. New to it in terms of how it can affect our health. And so to your point, you brought up the electromagnetic spectrum. It's actually very, very broad. You've got invisible infrared wavelengths of light to visible light that we see, every day, blue, green, red, et cetera, to UVB, UVA, UVB, et cetera. Various wavelengths. And when we talk about light therapy or photobiomodulation, there's actually a very narrow range of wavelengths that have been proven time and time again in clinical science to support some really strong benefits when it comes to overall health. And those wavelengths kind of generally fall in the red and near infrared range. But to your point, it's almost like the comparison would be like, think about 10 football fields, right? And we're focused on the 10 to 20 yard line on one of those football fields, right? And that's where kind of those specific wavelengths of light, red and near infrared, are sort of like where the magic happens when it comes to health and wellness.
Yeah, and that wavelength, that frequency is right around what, 650 to 750 nanometer frequency?
Yeah. Nanometers is typically the metric that's used when talking about wavelengths, and it's visible red light in that kind of that low to mid 600 nanometer range. And then near infrared, so not mid or far, not infrared like an infrared sauna, and we can certainly talk about that later on in the conversation, but near infrared in the kind of the low to mid 800 nanometer range. And those are, and not to say that other wavelengths of light can have benefits when it comes to certain health categories, but those two specific ranges have been proven by the most science.
Okay, so on your device, I have a Joov device. It's phenomenal. And there's two options. There's a red light option, then there's a near infrared light option. So is the difference just the near infrared, just the frequency is a little longer? Instead of 650 to 750, it's a little bit higher up in the frequency?
It is a little bit longer wavelength. And that's probably the number one question we get all the time is, what's the difference between the two, red versus near infrared? And there's probably some different mechanisms of action at a cellular level that we'll learn about over time. But for the most part, it's really just depth of penetration. So most of the energy from red light is absorbed in the superficial layers of our tissue. So primarily the dermis and epidermis of your skin. And then near infrared has the unique ability to penetrate into deeper tissues. And that's why you see it studied more often for, reducing joint pain and inflammation, or for bone health, stimulating, bone regrowth as an example.
Because so near infrared, you have deeper penetration. Infrared, regular red light, it's more superficial.
You got it.
And then, so let's go over that frequency. So 650 to 750 or so for the red, and then the infrared is what? What's that frequency there?
Yeah, it's about the mid 600s for red, and then the low to mid 800s for near infrared.
Low to mid 800s. Okay, great. Yep. So I can wrap my head around that. And just for people listening, you kind of go violet, blue, green, 400 to 500. So you keep on creeping up in that spectrum. Those wavelengths get longer as you go into red and infrared. Is that correct?
You got it. And I think the important point to call out here is in the analogy I like to use when we talk about different wavelengths of light is kind of thinking about it like food. We all understand our bodies metabolize different macronutrients in various ways, right? Proteins, carbs, fats. And it matters the time of day, right, that you eat those as well. Like if you eat a high glycemic carbohydrate late at night, not a great recipe for success, for health success anyway. But when it comes to wavelengths of light, those also have unique, our bodies respond uniquely from a physiological standpoint, different wavelengths. You mentioned UVB wavelengths of light as an example. We all understand that our bodies produce vitamin D in response to UVB exposure. Well, the cells, the mitochondria in our cells respond in unique ways to when exposed to red and near infrared light as well. So it's just kind of important to understand our bodies, they react and respond to these different wavelengths of light.
Can infrared or near infrared, can that burn your skin?
No. Not like UV ultraviolet rays from the sun as an example.
Okay, got it. So the ultraviolet rays, that's going to be on the 400-ish frequency. So you got to be in that lower 400, 450 or so to start getting the burn. Is that correct?
Yeah. It's in the kind of the mid 300s. There's a little bit of a range there, like mid to high 300s into the low 400s, and then you start getting into visible blue light as an example.
And what's happening? Like, why is it that wavelength gets longer? It's not having a burning effect. Is there a reason why your body's able to dissipate it or tolerate it better?
That's a great question. Probably a little bit above my pay grade, and probably more applicable to a photobiomodulation researcher, but not entirely sure that the mechanism at play there. But I think the important point to remember for people listening is our bodies just respond differently to these various wavelengths of light, just like food. And so, ultraviolet wavelengths of light can be beneficial. They can help our bodies produce more vitamin D, but like prolonged exposure, isn't great because, we're likely to burn. It's likely to cause a skin burn. So
exactly. Now, some people, they also talk about, vitamin, like the ultraviolet light, that's going to stimulate cortisol. It's going to take down melatonin. That's why we keep lights off at night, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But tell me about red light on melatonin effects. Like, can you do red light before bed? Will that negate your melatonin and make it harder for you to go to sleep and stimulate you? What do you notice with that?
Yeah, when it comes to red light, this is kind of one of the emerging categories within the world of light therapy that is showing some interesting promise, right? Exposure to red and near infrared light, and can it help your body produce more melatonin? There's some early, some small studies. I mean, we're kind of early in learning more about this category, but there are some interesting studies. One in particular that stands out to me while we're chatting here is researchers that evaluated female basketball players that were exposed to full body red light therapy. I think, if I remember correctly, it was a relatively short amount of time, but they saw tremendous results in terms of their sleep quality. And researchers then concluded that it's highly likely that these wavelengths of light are stimulating melatonin production. And so I think that's one of and that's, anecdotally, we've heard now from, hundreds of our own customers that have reported back, benefits with regards to enhanced sleep quality when using, red and near infrared light on a consistent basis. And so it appears that, yes, that's definitely happening. And there's no doubt that it's definitely a better wavelength of light to be exposed to once the sun begins to set. Because, if we're looking at, I know you've covered this on your show before, Dr. J, but if we're exposed to bright blue light or bright white light at night, that's very disruptive to our circadian rhythm.
Yes.
It serves as almost a signal to our brain, right? Our brain says, body, you should be wide awake because it's sunny out. It's this bright blue and white light that's stimulating. And so we think our body thinks that it's midday, it's the middle part of the day, when in reality we should begin to prepare for bedtime. And so that is it's a much more gentle form of light to be used, in the evenings. There's no doubt, but it does appear that there's some therapeutic effect as well in terms of stimulating more melatonin production.
Exactly. So we have typical ultraviolet light. So like if we have like the spectrum, right? All of the infrared stuff's at the top of the spectrum, then the colors kind of go down like red, orange, yellow, blue, indigo, violet. Violet's here, and then you have the ultraviolet just below. So it's the ultraviolet that's going to be burning you, and then one step above is the kind of the blue, and that's most of the lights that you're going to see indoors, right?
Yep. Yeah. Bright white or bright blue light. Exactly. And blue light has some interesting effects, right? It gets a really bad rap, right? In terms of overexposure from devices, but usually that's because we're using it at the wrong time of day. Using blue light in the morning is not, I mean, depending on the source, of course, but it may not be bad because it helps to reset your circadian rhythm.
Yeah.
But
cortisol,
yeah. And it can actually, there's a fair amount of clinical research that suggests blue light is very good for, bacterial induced acne, as an example. So it has its benefits. But most of us, at least here in America, use it the wrong way, or we're getting blasted with it at night at the wrong time of day. And, it's completely disruptive to our circadian biology.
Absolutely. So let's kind of, before we talk about, so people listening, this is going to be like the soup to nuts, everything about red light that you guys want to know about, the science, diving in deep, but also kind of pulling it back and having the application. So if you guys just don't care, you want to know how to use it, we're going to go over that too. So hold tight. What's happening when light hits your skin? You get red light going. What's happening to the mitochondria? What's happening underneath the hood? People can wrap their heads around that.
Yeah. And we'll start high level and we can certainly go deeper if you want to, Dr. J. But at a high level, the mitochondria in our cells, so the powerhouses of our cells, are being stimulated by these wavelengths of light. So there's a process called cellular respiration. Our mitochondria, follows that process to produce more ATP energy, adenosine triphosphate. Yep. And so we're actually, there's a pretty well understood mechanism. It's probably the most well understood mechanism that red and near infrared light play a key role during the fourth phase of that process, that cellular respiration process. And the end result is that our mitochondria are functioning better. They're producing more energy. And because of that core kind of stimulation at the mitochondrial level, you see a wide range of benefits, right? Everything from improved skin health, increased collagen production, anti-inflammatory reactions, right? Through and the byproduct would be reduced, pain and inflammation, et cetera. But it's all because of that core mechanism of action that these specific wavelengths of light are stimulating our mitochondria to produce more energy.
Totally. So it's stimulating the mitochondria, producing more energy. We have more ATP. Obviously, we're making ATP from our food as well, right? Mm-hmm. So essentially we have our food and then we have the light. So we're kind of supercharging our energy system so we can generate more ATP.
You got it. And there's also some, I mean, that's in the world of photobiomodulation, that's kind of been the gold standard mechanism of action for quite some time is these wavelengths of light and their ability to resonate with an enzyme called cytochrome C oxidase. But as this kind of this field of light therapy emerges, we're beginning to learn a lot more about mm-hmm. various mechanisms at play. There's a lot of interesting data around light therapy and cognitive health as an example, and these two wavelengths of light being able to increase or create new synapses in your brain as an example, right? There's some interesting research which we may get into related to oncology and the ability for these wavelengths of light to stimulate TGF-1 beta, which is a certain cytokine. So there's a lot of new learnings, and I'm certain we'll learn more about the mechanisms, over the the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. But that core kind of function of these wavelengths of light being able to help your mitochondria and your cells produce more energy, that's why we see such wide-ranging benefits when it comes to red and near-infrared light.
So what's the number one benefit you're seeing your customers experience? Like they're like, hey, I plugged in, I used it, it's my first week, this is what I'm feeling, I love it. What is that typical feedback?
There's probably 3 or 4 core benefits that
Great.
We hear back and that are also supported by probably the most science. One would be skin health. It's very, very clear that you're gonna be hard pressed to find someone that uses red and near infrared light, especially red light, on a consistent basis where their skin doesn't look better over time.
Yeah, I've noticed my skin tone the last week is really evened out.
I was just gonna say, it looks good,
glowing. Yeah, it's really glowing. So I'm like, okay, this is good. I'm gonna do 5 minutes after this, 5 minutes after work. This is great. I like it.
Yeah. So that's one of the key benefits. And then there's a few others that really stand out too. Most people that purchase our devices that are trying to reduce pain and inflammation, that's one of they usually see pretty dramatic results. It kind of depends on how severe that pain is and whether they see like immediate results after maybe one session, or if it takes 2 to 3 weeks. But the reduction of pain and inflammation is another core benefit as well that we often hear. So skin health, reduction of pain and inflammation, and then there's a few others. We have got a lot of kind of fitness enthusiasts that purchase our devices too. They typically they find that they recover a lot faster after training. So they know how, after doing maybe a typical HIIT workout or a CrossFit workout or something like that, they know how their body typically feels. And using red and near infrared light, especially near infrared light, they're seeing some pretty significant decreases in terms of their recovery time. So muscle recovery, that's another big one. And then there's kind of some early interesting things that we're beginning to study ourselves as a company, one of which is hormone health. That's another kind of emerging kind of benefit that we hear a lot back from customers on, that have done blood work, and they're seeing these biomarker changes with respect to different hormones. And that's kind of another kind of emerging kind of health benefit that's interesting as well.
That's great. You said a couple of things I want to circle back to, but I want to just hit this off the bat because I specialize in thyroid health, and I see hundreds of patients that have autoimmune thyroid disease, like Hashimoto's, for instance. And I've used red light therapy where they've kind of really gotten close to the Joov device, gotten their throat right up to there. And we've seen a reduction in their antibodies and swelling and how they felt. So I've noticed it clinically, seeing that antibody reduction and just seeing the symptomatic improvement, swallowing tightness reduced. So I think that's phenomenal. Really cool.
Yeah. It's certainly exciting for us. And this kind of, when you look at like the published peer-reviewed evidence around light therapy and hormone function, and really specifically the thyroid, there is some interesting data for sure, but it's fairly limited. But over the past 2 to 3 years, we've seen a ton of responses from our customers that have like Hashimoto's as an example, or some sort of thyroid condition, or just like guys in general that are like, man, I'm on TRT and it's not, that's the only way I can keep my testosterone up, as an example. And they're doing, pre and post blood work, before and after using, red light therapy. And so we those two things, the lack of kind of the minimal amount of existing evidence combined with like a lot of anecdotal, feedback from our customers has kind of sort of caused us to look at this even further. And in fact, we just wrapped up a clinical study with a group in Minneapolis, Bristol Cone Medical, where we actually study this. We took both male and female participants and looked at progesterone to estradiol ratios in women, and then testosterone to estrogen ratios in men. And the two groups that we looked at were people that they were on a normal, kind of standard American diet and just incorporated red light therapy. And then the other group incorporated red light therapy and then also did the ketogenic diet. And so we looked at those two cohorts in this particular study. Really interesting. In fact, we're recording this here in kind of mid to late January, and one of the researchers, Dr. Kelly Gibbous, is actually going to be presenting the data at the Metabolic Health Conference here in Southern California this weekend. But really interesting results. Yeah, for sure. And just to kind of follow that up, the participants that ate a normal, they didn't do anything. The only thing they did differently was introduce red light therapy. So ate their kind of normal diet. They saw significant increases in both testosterone in men and progesterone in women. Really significant, statistically significant differences. But then when you looked at the group that was on a ketogenic diet and then introduced red light therapy into their daily routine, they saw phenomenal increases. It was like, it's mind blowing. I mean, we're talking about 50 to 100% changes in testosterone and progesterone. So really compelling. It appears that there's definitely some metabolic synergies going on when it comes to, red light therapy and our body's ability to produce those hormones.
So what's the mechanism, right? Like I'm just trying to wrap my head around this. I'm
Mhm.
thinking, okay, well, we know red light has a major effect on inflammation. We know the more inflamed you are, the more your glandular system is kind of always hardwired to deal with stress and inflammation, overhealing, recovery, reproduction, right? These
Mhm.
hormones are all reproduction hormones, but they also help you age well, put on muscle, feel great. But the more stressed you are, the more you're going to make your anti-inflammatory stress hormones to put out the fire. So I see one possible mechanism is
Mhm.
just reducing inflammation. I see the other one is mitochondria and all these glandular tissues as well. We're enhancing mitochondrial function, which has to then, on the other side, increase glandular output. Am I kind of in the right wheelhouse there? What do you think?
That would be my hypothesis. Is
Mm-hmm.
is is what you just recalled there, Dr. J, and that's actually what Dr. Gibbous reported back in one of her conclusions is like this ability for red and near infrared light to reduce what she referred to as metabolic congestion. So think of like cars going down a busy interstate, and you got this traffic jam, and that's what kind of happens in our mitochondria. Where if we're overloaded with, if our mitochondria has too many different choices when it comes to food, or too many different choices to fuel itself, there's like a log jam. Basically, you get sort of cars
Backed up.
weaving,
Mm-hmm.
backed
Yep.
up, cars kind of
Mm-hmm.
clogging, changing
Yep.
lanes. And red and near infrared light's ability to like enhance cell signaling and reduce that congestion may lead to some of these enhancements when it comes to hormone function. There's other people though that believe, with guys as an example, that that the Leydig cells in our testes that
Yep.
are responsible for producing testosterone, that
Yep.
you're helping the mitochondria and those cells function better, and a byproduct is more testosterone. I think there may be some merit to that, but I think it's actually more of a metabolic kind of mechanism. But nonetheless, we hope to learn a lot more about like what's really going on there in terms of the mechanism. But it's pretty interesting. And just to reiterate, I tend to agree with you that it's probably there's something systemic going on versus like a direct therapeutic effect on a particular cell type.
And when you say metabolic, you mean kind of modulating that mitochondria, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. All right. Very cool. And I think it's correct that every cell in the body has a mitochondria except the red blood cell. So it makes sense that, those cells would all have a mitochondria and would benefit from that. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
Now, from an application standpoint, what does that look like? So if you're a guy, I mean, are you just trying to get your kind of genital area 4 to 6 inches away from the red light, or do you have to be right up against it? So if I'm inflamed, my shoulders hurt, do I have to be right up against it a couple of inches? If I'm trying to have glandular modulation, do I have to have my genitals or my ovaries like within a couple of inches, so I'm right up against that wall? How does that look from an application standpoint?
Yeah, you want to be pretty close to the device, and this comes down to really the power that's delivered from the device. Generally speaking, like we've had our products independently tested, so we're really, we acutely understand like the dose of energy that's being delivered at a certain distance from our device, which is why we recommend, generally speaking, about 6 inches away from our product. But it kind of depends. But generally speaking, yeah, you want to be pretty close. If you're say you've got a bum shoulder or something like that, and you're trying to reduce the pain and swelling, as an example, yeah, you want the device to be pretty close. We're talking inches. You don't. I mean, the further you get away from any type of device, even if it's a high powered one, the power or irradiance that's delivered from it drastically drops off, and it's not linear. It's not 1-to-1. So, like as an example, at about 12 inches away from our device, the power that's delivered to your tissues really begins to fall off pretty dramatically. So what that means is in order to receive the same clinically relevant dose of energy, you have to use it for a lot longer period of time. And so if you want something like that's short and impactful and, includes kind of that like a clinically relevant dose of energy, like I mentioned, you want to be pretty close to the device.
And if you have inflammation issues, you probably want your body almost touching that, right? If my shoulders hurt, I almost want to be right up against it, right?
Yeah, you got it. I mean, we recommend some distance from the device, just because we're not. If you're right on top of it, it can result in like a heating effect.
Okay.
And that's not what we're really trying to do. We're not trying to induce like a sauna type effect. But yeah, you want to be pretty. You want to be, generally speaking, you want to be within inches. 3 to 6 inches.
Okay. Yeah. I know in the manual it says 4 to 6. That's good. That's really good. All right, cool. So we have that, and then we can just get our body within that 4 to 6 inch bubble, and we're pretty good there. I also noticed it. My 5-month-old son, Hudson, having a little bit of eczema. So we're doing a lot of different diet tweaks and things like that. We're on top of that, and we're starting to do a little bit of the red light on eczema, for the eczema on the skin. What have you noticed with autoimmune skin issues like eczema?
Yeah, that's another kind of overall skin health is supported by a lot of peer reviewed science
Hmm.
when it comes to red light therapy. But certain skin conditions are really super interesting, especially those that are autoimmune related. And so yeah, there does appear to be a positive effect when using red light therapy for skin conditions like rosacea, eczema, psoriasis, and it kind of depends. It's like I'm sure there's like a direct physiological targeted kind of effect with when in terms of if I've got eczema on my face and I'm shining the light right at my face. Yes, there's probably a direct effect there, but I also tend to think that if it's autoimmune related and you're exposing your full body to red and near infrared light, there's probably a positive inflammatory response as well that's also
Yeah.
helping. But yeah, that's certainly an interesting category. We hear a lot of positive feedback from customers that are seeing benefits when it comes to red light therapy and conditions like that.
It's obviously modulating the immune system, probably just through inflammation reduction or just bumping up the mitochondria. Are there any other mechanisms that you could think of why it would be modulating the immune system?
Yeah, there appears to be a shift in our immune system from what's an M1 phenotype to an M2
Mm.
phenotype, where our immune
Hmm.
system becomes just. I like to use, this is kind of maybe a silly example, but I kind of think of like Pac-Man. Everyone understands
Yeah.
like
Yep.
the old school Pac-Man. When our immune system begins to shift to an M2 phenotype, like our white blood cells become more Pac-Man like, so they're able to kind of eat up um, 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 cells that we don't
Yep.
want around. And so you do see a positive immune response. And I mentioned one of the other mechanisms of action that we're learning a little bit more about is this ability for red and near infrared light to stimulate TGF-1 beta, which is a pretty important cytokine in terms of within kind of the broader immune function or immune system. And that's something that Dr. Praveen Irani touched on a recent interview we did with him. He's one of the world's leading researchers in the world of photobiomodulation, but that's something his lab is learning a lot more about, is that ability for these wavelengths of light to stimulate that really important cytokine.
Very cool. Excellent. So lots of good benefits there. And then a couple questions. So why is it people have issues with fluorescent light? They're in buildings. What's that frequency? What's that doing? And why is that so noxious?
Yeah, and it could be fluorescent. It could be just any poor source, right? It could be a cheap LED device. It could be a bad incandescent source. But it's the fluorescent light is not necessarily, the negative impact is not necessarily because of the brightness of the light, like the white light it delivers. It's more the flicker effect that's happening with
It's more the flicker.
Yeah, and so that's kind of sometimes that LEDs get a bad name as an example, but it comes down to like the wavelengths that are delivered from that light and whether or not the actual source is high quality. And so sometimes you'll get inferior fluorescent bulbs that do have a tendency to flicker, and it's pretty clear that could lead to some negative some bad health consequences with overexposure to any sort of device that's or light source that's flickering. But again, the key there is overexposure, right? I mean, if you're 5 to 10 minutes a day, it's not going to hurt you. But if you're inside an office, for 8 hours a day, exposed to, fluorescent bulbs that are, have a tendency to flicker, probably not great, because that's a long period of time.
So when it comes to that, what's that frequency? Is that a blue light frequency?
That's delivering from fluorescent. It's really
fluorescent.
it's more the pulsing actually that's going on, the pulsing of that frequency of light, right? So it's most indoor lighting, as an example, is delivering white or blue light.
So on the spectrum, like we know blue's at the lower end of the spectrum, meaning like 400-ish. How about white? Where's that at?
White light?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's even lower. Yeah.
I was even lower than that.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
got it.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, cool. Very cool. And then I'm just curious with the red light, do you have the ability to make vitamin D off that at all? Or is that strictly the violet lights that do that, ultraviolet lights?
No, it's just UVB wavelengths of light. Yep.
So you got to be on the ultraviolet kind of lower 300-ish range. So you'll make no vitamin D off the red light. And then you give an option on the Joov, which is interesting. You have the red light option as well as the infrared option.
Yep.
What's the point of that? Should everyone just be doing both? And if they're not, why would one person do one over the other?
Yeah, it's the major difference is the depth of penetration. So near
you
infrared,
mentioned that. Yes.
yeah, near infrared light.
Superficial red, deeper infrared. Yep, got it.
Yep, yeah, and most of our customers, it's pretty rare that you'd use one or the other.
Okay.
But as an example, like someone that's just using red light therapy for skin health, as an example, they may not respond favorably to near infrared light. Maybe they're prone to hyperpigmentation, as an example. In that scenario, they may want to turn off the near infrared light. Because near infrared light does, I mean, it's been shown that to stimulate the production of pigment in our skin. So if you're kind of prone to, hyperpigmentation of any kind, that might not be, a great wavelength to use, as an example.
Got it. Could it give you a tan?
No, that's not. It's typically not the response physiologically that you're going to get from red and near infrared light.
Okay, got it. That makes sense. So in general, we'd probably want to have both frequencies on.
Yeah, most of our customers do, unless it's kind of a rare use case where you don't want to use near infrared light, as an example. But yeah, there's a lot of benefits to using both, and you get the kind of the best of both worlds in terms of both superficial and deep deep penetration with near infrared light.
Got it. And the only reason why maybe you're sensitive superficially, but you want the deep near infrared benefits, essentially.
Yep, you got it.
And then what about far infrared? I mean, people talk about that too. Is that not as therapeutic?
No, that's next to like, what's the difference between red and near infrared? What's the difference between red light therapy and infrared sauna? That's probably the second most common question that comes up, kind of in this world. And again, it all kind of goes back to the mechanisms at play when it comes to how our bodies respond to different wavelengths of light. And so the infrared wavelengths of light that you'll find in a dry infrared sauna are most of the time going to be mid and far infrared. So we're talking about wavelengths in the 1,000 to 20,000 nanometer range. So it's really, really broad spectrum, that infrared spectrum, and it's divided up into infrared near, mid, and far wavelengths of light. And so our devices deliver near infrared, which has been proven to stimulate our cells in a certain fashion. Where mid and far infrared, those wavelengths, our bodies respond to those wavelengths. I guess the result is the production of heat, which is why they're used in a sauna. And so most of the time, those wavelengths, those mid and far infrared wavelengths, are absorbed by the water in our cells. And so that tends to be why you'll see dry saunas use mid and far infrared, because they do a great job at generating heat, but you don't necessarily get the same physiological response that you do with red and near infrared light.
Got it. And then with the red, we're in like the low sevens, and then we go up another 100 or so with the near. Is that correct?
Yeah, you got it. And then
another 100 or so for the far.
I mean, thousands, another thousands. So the mid and far, or the infrared range, the infrared kind of range within that broader EMF spectrum, the infrared range is anywhere from like 800 nanometers to 20,000 nanometers. So it's really, it's really, really broad.
And with the far, we're at the top end of the 20,000 ish.
Yeah. You're into the thousands. And so our body, there's a different physiological mechanism that's happening when you're exposed to, infrared wavelengths, and heat is a byproduct, which is why, a lot of saunas incorporate or utilize sources that deliver mid and far infrared wavelengths, is because they do a great job at producing heat. It's kind of one of the same things that the infrared heat lamps that you can pick up like at Home Depot or Lowe's, as an example. Mm-hmm. They have like they typically have a red tint to them. Yes. Those they're called infrared heat. They're heat lamps because it's kind of the name is self-explanatory. They do a great job at producing heat because they're delivering mostly mid and far infrared wavelengths of light. And so that's why they do a good job at producing heat. But
they're not going to provide that red light as much as like the Joov would, for instance.
You got it. Yeah. Different wavelengths of light. So our devices deliver red and near infrared. And it's kind of, yeah. And this can get kind of like, technical pretty quick, but it's just, again, it's just important for anyone that's kind of interested in learning more and going deeper, and maybe even potentially, picking up a device. You really want to make sure you understand which wavelengths it delivers. It's like, picking up looking at a label on a food product. You want to understand like how many grams of fat is in this product, or how many, what's the carbohydrate content and the protein content. It's kind of the same thing. You want to understand which wavelengths of light are delivered from this device, because our bodies respond differently to all these different types of wavelengths.
Very cool. Yeah, and I have a Joov in my biohacking layer. And so if anyone wants to pick it up, we'll put a link down below if you guys want to grab that. So let's talk more about the application. So what's the typical dose? Are we talking like 10 minutes once a day? Can we break it up? What's the smallest dose for the maximal benefit?
Yeah, and we when we first designed our devices, we wanted a product that could deliver a clinically relevant dose for general health and wellness in a short amount of time. And so with our devices, we generally, we talked about the treatment distance, kind of that 3 to 6 inches away from the device for about 8 to 10 minutes per treatment area. So like if you have a product like our Joov Mini as an example, which is kind of like the size of maybe like a 15-inch MacBook, it's thicker, of course, but like the footprint, that's great for like targeted treatments, right? If you want to just treat your face, if you have like a sore hip as an example, great device for that. But if you want a full body system, the only difference between something like the Joov Mini and something bigger like the Joov Quad or the Joov Elite is really just coverage area. That's all. It's the same power. It's the same. You're going to get the same dose as long as you're kind of within that same treatment distance. It's really just treatment area. That's the only difference. So if you're interested in if you're interested in kind of a full body treatment in a short amount of time, you're going to want to go with a bigger system, of course.
Okay, very cool. And then when you're in there, it's kind of instinctively you want to keep your eyes closed. Is it okay if you look at the light? Will that damage your eyes at all?
That's a great point. I'm glad you brought it up, Dr. J. We've actually done, as part of like the FDA registration process with our devices, we have to do certain IEC safety testing, one of which is photobiological safety testing, primarily focused on eyes. Are these wavelengths delivered from a product harmful for your eyes? And we've obviously passed those safety tests, which is why we do not include eyewear with our products.
Good.
But having said that, there's a lot of really, really solid clinical evidence, published evidence that suggests that these wavelengths of light are actually very beneficial for your eyes in terms of just overall vision enhancement, but also reducing symptoms like macular conditions like macular degeneration, as an example. So we actually it aligns. I mean, from our perspective, it's kind of twofold. Like our devices aren't harmful for these wavelengths from our devices aren't harmful for your eyes, but plus it's actually beneficial to expose, your eyes to these wavelengths of light as well. So there's kind of a two-pronged approach there in terms of our recommendation not to wear eyewear with our devices. As long as you're not, I mean, if it's so bright and you can't stand it, of course that, you maybe, get used to the therapy by wearing some glasses or something like that. But over time, we tend to recommend try to expose your eyes to the device. It can be pretty helpful typically.
So in a 10-minute therapy, you could just do it for a couple of minutes and then kind of close them or relax them or grab some sunglasses. That'd be okay.
You got it. Like as an example, when I have our biggest system, the Joov Elite, and when I use it, I just close my eyes at the beginning, and kind of. And you'll notice that by closing your eyes for a couple minutes, you can begin to open them over time. Your eyes are less sensitive if you start out with them closed.
And when you have a system that big, do you recommend just kind of stripping down and going naked right in front of it? Is that kind of the best thing, front and back?
You got it. Yep. I don't
cool.
I just use it for proactive health. So I don't have like maybe I don't fortunately don't suffer from like back conditions or anything like that. So I typically just do the front side of my body, in about 8-10 minutes, kind of depending on how I'm feeling. I stand on a vibration plate at the same time. So I kind of get some vibration therapy as well. But I think
love that. That's a great idea.
The important point. Yeah. I mean, stacking different things at the same time is pretty great. I also do some breathing, some breath work at the same time. It's a great way to, it's another kind of thing that I do as part of that red light therapy session. But I think on that note, one of the important points to call out is that, and I mentioned this earlier, like some people, they think, I'm going to buy a smaller device and then stand further back from it. And I can get the same benefits because it looks like, my body's being, fully irradiated with this light. And I think it's just important to remember that when you're farther back from any device, right? Even something that's, delivers a lot of power like ours, at about 12 inches or so, 12 to 18 inches, the dosage really, really begins to drop off dramatically. And so it's important to remember, like, you can't really get a full body treatment with a smaller device unless you're literally kind of moving it from body part to body part.
And once you go 12 inches, is that like a 90% reduction?
It's close to that. It's pretty dramatic. I'm not sure if it's like 90, it might be like, 70 to 80%, but it's not like, every 1 inch away, it's, the dosage drops off kind of linear like that. It's not like it really, really significantly drops off about that 12, foot and a half away or so.
Okay, got it. That makes sense. Very cool. And I think we hit all the major things. A couple things here. So, in regards to competitors, you have competitors out there. What makes you stand apart from the other products that are there on the
Yeah,
market?
and I mean, certainly don't want this to turn into a product pitch by no means. So I'll call out a few things. If you're if you're into this, you heard people talking about light therapy, you've looked at the science and are ready to kind of pull the trigger on a device. First thing I'd say is don't go buy a device right away. Try to get more natural sunlight exposure, right? That's
Yep,
free
that's
medicine
great.
as a
That's
buddy
free.
of
Yep.
mine, Dr. Ara Sapaya, likes to coin it. It's free medicine. So try to get more natural light exposure. But if you're in a climate that doesn't allow for that, or we used to live in the Midwest, and so you get long periods of a year where you don't get a lot of natural sunlight. Maybe you need to supplement your lifestyle with some light therapy. So if the next step is to purchase a device, we already touched on this, but make sure it delivers the right wavelengths. Red and near infrared are the wavelengths that have been proven time and time again based on peer-reviewed science. And you'll want like third-party data to back this up, right? Because any manufacturer can say, yeah, of course our devices deliver these wavelengths of light, but you want third-party data to support that. So make sure it's delivering the right wavelengths. Make sure it's delivering the right power. You can get away with using an underpowered device, but again, you just have to use it for long periods of time.
Longer.
Yeah. So you can, that's not to say that an underpowered, handheld device on Amazon can work, but instead of using it for, 8 to 10 minutes, you may have to use it for 30 to 40 minutes, if it's super underpowered. So make sure it delivers a clinically relevant dose of energy, and again, supported by independent third-party
Is there
data.
a number we're looking for on that?
It kind of depends what you're looking for in terms of irradiance, and really you want to look for joules of energy. You want to do that calculation. We've got a really helpful article on our site on how to effectively measure power from a light therapy device. So I'd encourage anyone to check out that article if they want to go deeper on that topic. But yeah, you want to look actually for joules of energy that are delivered from the device. So not like wattage consumed, right? You don't want to look for wattage consumption. You want to look for the energy joules that are delivered from the device. And so just make sure you just do your research there, and make sure ideally it's supported by independent third-party data. So wavelengths, power, and then we're big believers in full body light therapy. And so we design our devices to be modular in nature. And because of that, you can start with something smaller, right? Like a Joov Mini or a Joov Solo, which is the next size up. You can get your feet wet if you don't want to go all in with a bigger system. But because they're modular, they connect together both physically and electronically. So you can add.
There's a plug. You can add it to it. So you
got
it. The Solo, that's what, 5 feet? Oh, 5 feet?
Yeah. It's about 3.5, 4 feet, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you can put one next to it and then plug it in, and then they're in sync when you turn it on, right?
You got it. Yep. And that's something that we've
smart.
It's a patented design, and we did that because of our fundamental belief that full body light therapy is more clinically efficacious, but not everyone has thousands of dollars to pour into a light therapy.
It allows you to build onto it, so you don't have to start over every time. You buy one piece. Okay, maybe next year if I like it, I'll get a second piece for it, and then you have even more therapeutic output. That's great.
Yeah.
What about people that have autoimmune skin issues like vitiligo, right? Vitiligo or melasma issues. Can they benefit from this too? Will that kind of help even things out or modulate the inflammation? Or help even with pigment stimulation?
Yeah. I mean, in fact, near infrared light can actually stimulate melanocytes, right? Which are the cells that produce,
melanin.
Pigment. Yeah. So, on that note though, so if you are prone to hyperpigmentation, you do probably want to stay away from near infrared light, but red light is actually very beneficial. Because
that's why you have the option. So you can have there's a button for near infrared and then also just red. So you have those two options. That's cool.
Yeah. And some like a condition like hyperpigmentation, you don't want pigment, right? You're trying to lessen your body's responses. And typically, as you know, Dr. J, there's a lot of probably underlying things that are happening.
Estrogen dominance, or maybe birth control usage, things like that. Yep,
yeah. That are leading your cells to produce that pigment. It's an inflammatory response. And so, so I mean, these wavelengths of light can actually be very, very beneficial in terms of helping with that and a positive immune response. But on the flip side, just obviously you don't want to use near infrared light if you're trying to avoid stimulating your melanocytes to produce more melanin.
Totally. And I've seen some critics online that talk that are extra critical about some of the red light devices. Now, their big complaints are, I'm not even sure if it's real or not. They complain about the flicker rate.
Mm-hmm.
What's your opinion on the flicker rate? Does this matter? Does this change any of the therapeutic benefit? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, the concept or the subject of flicker is really it's kind of like the Wild West a bit. I think a lot of people are tend to over exaggerate it, but I'll say this with our this is our view. One of the co-founders of Joov, their son suffered from I'll say is very, very sensitive to EMFs and flicker. His body, I'm really, at least I don't think I am, but he's actually very sensitive. As an example, like he's I think how old is he now? He's 20, but like in his teenage years, he worked at Best Buy as an example. It was very, very difficult for him to function inside that environment because all of those devices, all of that lighting, constantly emitting some sort of modulated flicker or just it's not a great source of light from a wavelength perspective. So anyway, I say that because we're very cognizant of trying to reduce EMFs and flicker as much as possible with our devices. So we've implemented various design various things in the design of our products to help lower those as much as possible. But when it comes to flicker, it's overexposure that's critical. Right. If you're using something like our Joov Solo device for 8 to 10 minutes a day, like we've reduced the flicker almost as much as you possibly can with the device that's plugged into the wall. And we have independent data to support this. In addition, you're only using it for 8 to 10 minutes a day. So you're not, you're not.
And if it was harmful, you wouldn't be seeing the studies producing some of these positive benefits. There'd be some kind of confounding variable in there.
Yeah. And 100%. And then in addition, there's actually a lot of evidence that suggests pulsed light, right? So basically intentionally causing a light therapy device to flicker, right? To pulse at a certain modulation can actually be much more efficacious than continuous wave light therapy, right? So there's actually, and most photobiomodulation researchers agree that the evidence is overwhelming that actually pulsing, so intentionally inducing a modulation type of effect can actually lead to better results. So I think, long story short, don't get me wrong, I don't want to underappreciate the whole flicker and EMF topic by any stretch of the imagination. We're very cognizant of designing devices around for that and trying to mitigate those two things as much as possible. But there's a lot of misinformation and people generally speaking don't understand the impact, don't understand those two subjects within the context of light therapy.
Very cool. Excellent. And is the device, is it an AC current or DC?
It's AC. You plug it in, you plug it into the wall. Yeah.
The wall. Got it. Okay.
Yeah,
very cool. Excellent. Is there anything else you want to leave the listeners here with? This is kind of my soup to nuts compendium. I'll be making sure all my patients get access to this and they know the benefits and people can kind of use this as a resource. We'll have everything transcribed as well, so people can get to the information faster. Anything else you kind of want to leave with us, Scott?
Yeah. The thing that I would probably leave, the one or two things that I'd probably leave everyone listening to this is just be more first step when it comes to kind of light in general, just be more cognizant of it. Right. There's simple, easy steps that you can do to help, help prevent disruption in your circadian rhythm at night, as an example, wearing blue light blocking glasses, replacing, certain light bulbs at home. So just be more cognizant of just your light exposure in general, try to appreciate it a little bit more, maybe similar to how focused you are on your diet. Try to do the same when it comes to your light exposure. And then, if you're interested in digging into this topic in more detail, we have a wealth of resources on our website, educational articles that on these various, benefit categories, whether it's cognitive function, hormone health, skin, et cetera. So I'd encourage you to, if you're interested in kind of just learning a little bit more about the space, check out our website, and there's plenty of information there to go deep on.
Well, Scott, thank you so much. You're a wealth of knowledge. And again, I love the Joov device I have. I wouldn't have you on the show if I didn't already think the technology is phenomenal. I think you really said it just right, is kind of work with the foundational things that are already there, that are already free. Once you're kind of maxing out that and you want to take it to the next level, this I think is a really powerful tool to add to your kind of biohacking medicine cabinet, so to speak. We'll put links down below. So if you guys enjoy it, want to check it out, let me know. We'll put the link down below. Feel free and get it there. Also, I'm going to do more videos in the coming weeks with my Joov device. You really inspired me with the vibration plate in front of the Joov. I'm like, oh, I'm going to do that. I'm going to make that happen. So thanks, Scott, for your great feedback and knowledge. Anything else you want to leave?
No, that's it. Thanks for having me on, Dr. J. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Scott. You have a great day. Bye.
Got a question for Dr. J? Go to BeyondWellnessRadio.com and click the questions button. Then tune in to hear the answer. Also, if you like the show, click below to review us on iTunes. For more Beyond Wellness Radio, go to BeyondWellnessRadio.com.